thank you, Chairman Hefner. Now, I have the honor of introducing someone who will introduce someone. So, we obviously know who our keynote speaker is today. I am not the most qualified person to be introducing her. There's someone far more qualified to do just that. And her bio lists her as State Representative Helen Kerwin of House District 58. But I happen to know her as a friend, a mentor, and one of the fiercest advocates for her constituents of any member. And for those of you that interact with her, you know what I mean. You know what I mean by that. Representative Kerwin was first elected to the State House in 2025, bringing her decades-long record of service as a small business owner and entrepreneur, mayor of Glen Rose, and the first Republican Somerville County Commissioner. Last session, she did yeoman's work fighting to pass school choice as a member of the House Public Education Committee, working to champion real property tax reform, and I have to add, this representative is single-handedly responsible for shifting the Overton window on the issue of PFAS and protecting our farmland in Texas from poisonous chemicals. But her list of accomplishments is wholly incomplete without acknowledging the fact that she has raised some truly remarkable children. And it's on that note that I ask you to join me in welcoming Secretary Rollins' wonderful mother, an esteemed member of the Texas House of Representatives, the Honorable Helen Kerwin.
Thank you. Actually, my real name is Brooke Rollins' mom. And every time I have the opportunity to be here at Texas Public Policy Foundation event, I am beyond thrilled. The energy and spirit in the room yesterday, in the panels this morning, is just so energetic and so welcoming to everyone. There's something so special about being in a room full of people who believe in Texas and who believe in our freedoms. For those of you who don't always hear about Brooke's childhood, I thought that it would be more interesting to just share some of her childhood memories, a peek into her past, because I think everyone probably knows of her incredible accomplishments. So Brooke, here we go. 8 years old, 3rd grade, Glen Rose Elementary School's event of the year, the History Fair. All of her friends had poster boards, but not Brooke. Brooke wanted to take all the presidents, buy all the popsicle sticks, and 4 days write on each one and glue and check the ribbon on the far right. That was the first time I remember thinking, this one's gonna be a little different. A love of country, a sense of purpose, I think, was born that day. Next picture, 6th grade. She got her beloved Palomino brandy, who was the love of her life until she met her wonderful husband, Mark. It was here, I believe, she developed her love for the rural community that she grew up in Glen Rose. This was the beginning of her 4-H career that took her all the way through 12th grade, I think where her sense of competition and that spirit began. Long days, early mornings, practice, mucking out many stalls. Lots of barrel races. Mucking out many stalls, where I really think that gave her the grit and the discipline and the hard work ethic that she shows today. 9th grade, she competed in UIL poetry interpretation, finding her voice on the stage. Throughout high school, she continued in public speaking contests with her FFA. Senior year, are you ready? senior class president, head cheerleader, UIL State Public Speaking Championship, FFA first vice president. Here's a funny story. The principal pulled me in September of her senior year and said, Helen, we're going to take head cheerleader away from her because she has too much to do. So for those of you who believe in productivity, in our conservative values and hard work, I just stood up and looked at him and said, no way. And so she continued on to do that. And then, of course, college, when she became an Aggie. Yeah. First female student body president, Cotton Bowl queen, top graduating senior in a class of over 9,000. And somewhere in between, she was named Miss Aggieland because apparently she had decided sleep was optional at that point in her life. But through all of it, through every stage, every title, every opportunity, she never lost where she came from. She never lost Glen Rose. She never lost rural Texas. She never lost that little girl who built a fort out of popsicle sticks and believed deeply in our beloved country and our state. And that's why the work she is doing today matters so much. And so she is fighting for rural America and agriculture, not from a distance, but from growing up in it. She understands it, she lived it, she loves it. And in many ways, I feel she is circled back here today at TPPF. Before Washington, before all of it, there was this place, her beloved TPPF. So yes, many of you know her as a national leader. Many of you know her as a policy leader. But I have the great privilege of knowing her simply as my daughter, who yesterday actually told everyone about Jesus and having faith on Easter. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor and a very proud mother to introduce to you my daughter, my heart, my pride and joy, your Secretary of Agriculture, Brooke Rollins.
That was amazing! Oh my goodness! Did they put a shirt? Yes, they did. Yes, they did. Wow. Oh my goodness. Well, that was unexpected. Y'all got to see the Coke bottle glasses and the real big 1980s small town Texas hair. Let's go. There's a lot I can say about my mom, and I'll say a couple things, but first let me say that first and most importantly, this is not my story, this is God's story. In no world, unless in this country and with God's hand, would the oldest child of 3 girls raised by a single mom, didn't have much except a whole lot of love and a whole lot of hustle, grew up in a town of 1,200, would be here in front of you today, would yesterday have spent 2 hours in the Oval Office with the president, would the day before be celebrating Easter on the White House lawn. By the way, I did send out an Easter message on Sunday, and yesterday I found out I'm getting sued by the state of California over my Easter message. How awesome is that? Bring it on. Bring it on. But it is God's story, and what a joy to be here. And again, nowhere in this country is this story, nowhere but this country is this story even possible. And that's what makes this work and this organization and all of you so important in that battle. For Dr. Jim and Cecilia and Ernest Angelo and my Dougie Deason and Chaz Neely and Brenda Payovich, and I'm sure there are other board members out there, Greg Sindelar. I am constantly overwhelmed and so full of gratitude for what you allowed me to be a part of for so long, and that I will never, never not be a part of, and that is this organization. And I love you all so much, and it is like coming home to me. I remember as I'm sitting in the audience, 2003 was our first event. It was called the Policy Orientation for the Texas Legislature. I know we've changed the name over the years. And I was 28 or 29 years old. We had just won the House, the Senate, and the governorship. Rick Perry, David Dewhurst, thank you, Mr. Craddock, who's probably here today. And it was a new day, and I was hired to take over this think tank, and there were only a handful of employees, and many of you know the story, but there wasn't any money in the bank. They hadn't paid bills in forever. We couldn't make payroll. But again, God's hand, and Wendy Graham and Dr. Jim and Ernie and many of the same crew that's still here today took a chance on me all those years ago. And when we launched this event about a month after I started, we didn't know how it was going to go, like so many things, but we knew that Texas had the opportunity to pave the way in reclaiming America, and we didn't quite know what that would look like. But here we are today, and now we know, and we're so grateful. But back then we didn't. And I think about that was the first one. The third policy orientation for the Texas legislature, I showed up with my brand new baby, Brooke Rollins, who at that time was about, I don't know, maybe 10 weeks old. And that baby yesterday was just named the head yell leader at Texas A&M. For those of you that have been to many of these policy orientations, you know that for a good stretch of 10 years, I was pretty much pregnant at every single one of them, right? You all remember I was kind of waddling around and had a couple toddlers. The kids would come with me. This was, of course, before remote work, stay-at-home work, work from a distance. And this was certainly before most moms brought their kids to work. But this organization and this leadership allowed me to do that. And as a result, I'm so proud. The greatest accomplishment times a million of anything Mark or I have ever done is our 4 children. And I do believe that their heart for the Lord and their heart for their state and their heart for their country, all 4 of them, Luke, Jake, Anna, and Lily, all began because of the days attending meetings like this with me as little kids, and then listening and being part of meetings growing up. And now Luke at Texas A&M, Jake's a freshman at Texas A&M, Anna will be a freshman next year at Texas A&M. I know, the indoctrination is almost complete, y'all. Lily is in the 10th grade. She wants to go to Texas A&M. But again, this organization is my heart. So I'm so grateful. And to my wonderful, amazing mom who at 77 decided to run for the Texas legislature. I called her, I said, you know, they're calling me because this district needs a America First representative. But Mom, you are not gonna wanna do this. This is not a good idea. You're getting all your grandkids games and all the things. And without hesitating, she said, actually, I might be interested in doing that. And so here we are. No one works harder, knocks on more doors, answers her constituents. The Hurricane Helen moniker is the right moniker than your state representative from HD 58, everyone. So Mom, thank you. Thank you for your service and your incredible leadership. You know, when I headed up domestic policy for the President Trump in the first term, it was a message. When I came here and spoke to this event, it was a message to Texas back then of stay the course. And now that I have the tremendous honor of being in the cabinet of the president and leading the American people's own department, Abraham Lincoln founded the U.S. Department of Agriculture with the idea that the people needed their own department, that now my message in the second term for this president and as a member of his cabinet is to finish the job. And what a job it is. Americans like to talk about transformative presidents leading a revolution like the Reagan Revolution of the 1980s, which Ernie Angelo and others in this room were such an important part of. Or often we talk about how the election of 1820 with Andrew Jackson was itself a revolutionary moment in our history at least, of a president who was elected by the common people. Certainly there has been plenty of discussion recently of the Trump revolution. Revolutionary talk is especially prominent now, as in just a few months we will mark the 250th anniversary of our own American Revolution and proclaim the most important day in the history of all nations, which is July 4th, 1776. Revolution is in the air this year, and I understand it. I hope that I've been a small part of that. It's catchy and it communicates both change and agency and urgency. Even our Texas Revolution that we celebrated the anniversary of just last month, celebrated at 190th with our Texas Bicentennial now just around the corner. But the talk of revolution, and this is what I want to spend a little time on today, the talk of revolution can obscure something more important than the thing itself, something fundamental that differentiates the revolution of all other peoples in history of man. You see, when the French or the Russians or anyone else has a revolution, it is a severance, a separation from what came before. Their revolutions are overturnings, acts of destruction as much as creation, a cutting off from the old world, and a usually futile effort to build a new world. In France, they changed the calendar following their revolution. In Russia, they confiscated and destroyed churches and murdered millions of people upon their revolution. But our revolutions here in our country, in the English-speaking tradition, the American, the Texan tradition, are different. They are, paradoxically, acts of reclamation and restoration. They take back what was unjustly stripped from our people and our citizens. So the English Civil War was an effort to reclaim ancient liberties. So too the American Revolution was an effort to reclaim English liberties. So the Texas Revolution was an effort to, in the words of the Texas Declaration of Independence, reclaim that constitutional liberty and Republican government to which the Texans had habituated in the land of their birth, the United States of America. There's a reason that the first de facto flag of the United States featured a British Union Jack in the corner. And there's a reason that the flag of the Alamo defenders referenced the 1824 Mexican Constitution. Most people don't know that. Neither the American nor the Texans were engaged in what we call today as nation building. The nation was already built by settlers and religious pilgrims who braved boundless oceans and endured bitter winters. What the nation required instead was a defense and a restoration. And that's how I believe that's how we should think about the presidency of Donald Trump. Sure, there is a Trump revolution. I live it and breathe it every day, especially when he calls me at midnight and 5 a.m. Sometimes he calls me at midnight with an idea, and then he calls me at 5 a.m. to ask how much progress I've made on his idea. This has happened multiples of times. But it is also in this current state with President Trump, it is a revolution that Americans and Texans ought to immediately understand as uniquely ours. It is a revolution of reclamation. It is a revolution of restoration. It is a calling back to everything we have been and everything we have meant, our greatness and our glory, our heritage and our hope. A great and last chance effort to root America in its very best self, in its founding and oriented toward our future. Call it a Trump revolution, but know that what it is an American restoration. That is fundamentally what we do. We restore Americans to our birthright that our founders risked everything to secure. We restore America to our prosperity. We restore Americans to our history. We restore Americans to the America that the founders made, to the America that your fathers and grandfathers fought for, to the America that you were born to, and to the America that your and my children and future grandchildren deserve. It's what the overwhelming American majority voted for last November. And I want you to know that in this 15th month of term 2, we are making great strides in that restoration. As the 33rd Secretary of Agriculture, I have the privilege of a unique role in that work of restoration, supporting American agriculture, seeing that it flourishes in every way, is about more than just keeping America fed and fueled and clothed. All Americans have an important role in this unique moment and chapter in American story. But I remind everyone, that the farmer and the rancher are the Americans most important to all Americans. That isn't just because of what they do and supply every day, but these Americans of our rural communities like Glen Rose and others, small towns across this great state and country, places like border outposts in the Rio Grande right along South Texas border, or really the farm communities of California's Central Valley, to what the Vice President, my great friend J.D. Vance, who I connected with this morning, might call the hillbilly hamlets of the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains in eastern Kentucky. These places are home to the Americans who uniquely embody and embrace the qualities and the civics that make possible our democracy and our way of life. Our founders understood this well. Indeed, much of Thomas Jefferson's whole project and political philosophy especially was directed toward the belief that the independent farmer and the American with land must be protected at all costs, as it was then and especially as it should be today. The expansion of democracy that was spearheaded by Andrew Jackson and accelerated by Abraham Lincoln only affirmed the indispensable role of these Americans to all America, to grasp the truth, but also with this president, President Trump, perhaps the first in our lifetime to grasp it in such a profound way. But that's why we're not only moving fast, but we're moving faster than fast. We call it Trump speed for America and American farmers and ranchers and all of our country. We have been working so hard right here in Texas and around the country. I'll actually be back in McAllen, my 4th trip down to the border this next Friday, as we're working on some big projects down there, and of course have been all over our great state and frankly all over our great country over the last 14 months. We have worked so hard to put farmers and ranchers back at the center of policymaking in Washington. We have worked so hard to defend private property rights and combating agricultural lawfare through our Farmer and Freedom Network. We have implemented across the entire cabinet a robust deregulatory agenda. I remember when President Trump came down that escalator in 2015. And he started talking about draining the swamp and how important it was to get rid of, for every new regulation, 2 old ones. And I remember turning to Greg Sindelar and our TPPF team and saying, finally, someone's making deregulation cool again, because we just, you talk about it and people understand it, but it never was that exciting until President Trump talked about draining the swamp. And now I'm proud to say that in this term, because we learned from the first term, we created an organization in the middle to prepare for a second term. And in this second term, we're currently tracking for every 1 new regulation, 129 are going out the door. Y'all, this is a miracle. This is a miracle. God is not done with our country yet. We are working to unlock new markets around the world for all of our commodities and all of our products. Just last year alone, 18 new trade deals after the term of President Joe Biden, where not one new trade deal was enacted. I don't know what they did for 4 years other than focus on DEI and climate change, but how do you have not one new trade deal? We had 18 in the last year. Strengthening farm security, understanding that if our food supply is not secure, that we will lose freedom as we know it, and our children and grandchildren will never understand what real freedom tastes like. That's how important this is. Driving a bold rural revival agenda for our farmers and ranchers to breathe new life into our rural communities and new opportunity and prosperity across the heartland. Taking on threats like the new world screwworm, which is why I've been down to McAllen so much, but also bird flu and other animal diseases that threaten to really compromise our food supply. Tackling fraud and putting bad actors in jail in programs like our food stamp or SNAP program, streamlining rural development programs, tackling high input costs. I've got a group of great farmers coming in. They may actually already be in the room to talk about the fertilizer issue. It may not affect 95% of you in this room right now, but it will affect every single one of you if we are not able to solve for that issue quickly. And of course, so many of you in this room were part of and are part of the Make America Healthy Again movement. I didn't know how the partnership with my now dear friend Bobby Kennedy was going to go. We'd really never even had a conversation before. Interestingly, we were sworn in on the exact same day, voted on in the Senate, and then sworn in on the same day. And the very next day, Politico, which is a left-leaning DC media outlet, ran a big story about likely the first divorce to happen amongst the cabinet, and the partnerships would be between Bobby and myself. And instead, I think what you have seen is a partnership that will fundamentally transform this country, not only putting our farmers and ranchers first, putting real food back into the dietary guidelines and the pyramid, but you all know the numbers. We are in a health crisis in this country when only 1 out of 4 of our youth are military ready. 75% of our kids, age 18 to 22, can't even pass the military readiness test because of chronic disease, obesity, diabetes. This is not just about the health issues. This is about national security, and I believe all of that now will change because of Bobby's leadership and our partnership with states like Texas. So thank you for that. Today, the wholesale price of eggs is down 80% as we're bringing affordability back to our country. Today, there are 3.3 million fewer Americans on food stamps than there were just a year ago. Y'all, this is amazing. I remember the conversations we had. When I was at the Texas Public Policy Foundation. And Dr. Jim, we were here together for 15 years. I never planned to leave. The White House called, I said no. The White House called again, I said no. The White House called a third time, I said, well, maybe. The White House called a fourth time. President Trump is extremely resolute when he comes up with ideas. And then finally, by the fifth time, I went up there. But the 15 years I was here at TPPF, we so strongly believed that in Texas, we could prove and set the model that you can pull government back, that you can deregulate, that you can return power to the people. But even we, the most pathologically optimistic people in the world, we're Texans, would not have thought even possible to move people off of the federal government programs because the system is just so broken. But in 1 year, This is the goal. We've moved 3 million plus people off of food stamps, better blue-collar jobs, less fraud, restoring the taxpayer in the middle of the conversation on what we're spending, and that number will continue to decrease. We've blocked all illegal aliens from SNAP and from all federal government programs. We've approved 22 state waivers that allow states. SNAP is a federally funded program, but the states run it. So we can't really tell the states how to run it, but we can approve waivers. We have 22 states who have stopped selling junk food and sodas under the SNAP program. 22. Tells you how pernicious and strong the lobby can be in Washington when it became okay to allow taxpayer dollars to buy soda under the nutrition program of the United States of America. We've enacted the most significant reset of the federal nutrition policy in American history. We're soon going to be rolling out our school lunch program. We're revamping the SNAP program. Again, we're going to make sure that we're working to make America healthy again. We have blocked foreign adversaries and alongside many states, including Texas, from letting them buy our farmland. China owns 300,000 acres of our farmland over the last 20 years. That has to stop, and we will stop it. These are just a few of the things that the best truly is yet to come. Many of you got to hear my story earlier, growing up the daughter of a single mom in the very small Texas town of Glen Rose. By the way, some of you may know, but there's another person from Glen Rose who's currently the head coach of the Detroit Lions named Dan Campbell. So someone has said, and we grew up together, someone has said, what was in the water of that little town of 1,000 in Glen Rose? And I said, well, there was a nuclear power plant back there in our backyard. The president is trying to bring nuclear back, so, you never know. But growing up in that small town with farmers and ranchers in rural America and being with the president every day and talking to him and understanding the focus and the importance on putting real food and agriculture and our way of life back into the center of policy making will continue to be the utmost priority. My message for you as I wrap up today, and I know there's another part of the program, so I want to be very careful of not taking too much time. But my message to you is this, just as I started. As we're working to restore America on this 250th anniversary of our revolution, I want to repeat the president's message that the state of Texas must continue, extend, and expand your work to secure Texas and to secure our Texas way of life. For every legislator, for every staffer, for every think tanker, for every action-oriented person, for every funder, for every investor, for every CEO in this room, you hear it over and over again, and I hope it never becomes rote to you that without Texas, without that 8-year stretch during the years of Obama, when the only two places in the country that were creating jobs was Washington, D.C., and our great state. And there was a 5-year stretch where Texas created more jobs than every other state combined. Without this being the proving ground of freedom and liberty and less government, without this being the proving ground of what Jesus taught us, that you do for the least of these what you do for me. The best we can do for the least of these is a great job and great opportunity, and the opportunity to live the American dream. And the American dream is not about being on SNAP and taking down being on government programs and being on the WIC program. That is not the American dream. The American dream is a system where a young girl raised by a single mom in a small town can have big dreams, big hair and big dreams. And my goodness, with God's help in this incredible country and the great state of Texas, here we are. And that is what we fight for every single day. I am reminded of one of my favorite biblical stories that just kind of popped up recently. I host a Bible study for our cabinet every Wednesday morning at the USDA. And we've got a really great cabinet that We pray together, we laugh together, we cry together. These days can be hard sometimes, y'all. But we're all in it, and we're in it for the country, and we're in it for our boss. But a few weeks ago, we studied a great story out of Galatians. And it was the story of Paul, who had spent about 15 years building the church at this point, right? He was originally Saul, and he was killing Christians, and then had a direct communication, and then became obviously God's great evangelical who built the church outside of Israel, outside of Jerusalem. So Paul had been traveling and writing and building the church, and you all know he had been shipwrecked and beaten and stoned and imprisoned and all the things, and he just kept going. But he said, you know what, I'm going to go back. I'm going to go back and check on the church at home. So he shows back up in Jerusalem, and Peter, of course, was left to build the church in Jerusalem. And he shows up, and he does not like what he sees. He thinks Peter has made some real bad decisions. And so this is in Galatians. Y'all go read it. He basically has a come to Jesus, if you will, with Peter. And he says, Peter, you're messing everything up. Jesus never meant for the Gentiles to sit over there and everyone else to sit over there. And there can't be, multiples of categories of Christians and what we're fighting for and what we believe in. We've got to do this together. Paul was a tent maker. He was a pretty astute businessman. Peter was a fisherman. And Peter, I just kind of visualized this conversation in my mind. Peter's like, whoa, I'm doing the best I can here, Paul. This is not easy. And Paul said, well, you got to do better. You got to do better. And that story inspires me so much because I think even back to the beginning of the transformation of the world where a Savior came and died for us and gave us hope, and we all now have already won the race, right? We've already won the race. But even in that the chosen leaders of the beginning church struggled. They argued. They had different opinions. They didn't know how to get from point A to point B. They just knew they had to hustle really hard and try. And I think back to 250 years ago, maybe 250 years ago in a couple of years, maybe 252, 253 years. I think back to George Washington, the founder of our country, the founding farmer, I know I like to call him. And I think back to that moment in time when he wrote in his journal that he was about to go bankrupt. He couldn't make his bills. He wasn't making enough money. There'd been droughts and pests and issues, and it was done. But he wrote in his journal that he's going to keep working as hard as he can. This was before 1776. I think back to Thomas Jefferson, that same exact time when he was writing in his journal that his girlfriend, who he wanted to be his wife, had broken up with him to marry his best friend, and he never got over it. He never married. I think back to James Madison, whose parents, just a couple years before the Revolution, would write that their son was so shy, they didn't think he'd ever amount to anything, to nothing. And again, it inspires me that every moment in history that is a moment where civilization could go one way or another, where the darkness looks like it is beginning to overcome the light, that those of us fighting for the light must never, never stop fighting, ever. And how important that is. And at this moment in time, for us to have this opportunity together, for us to be able to work together, for the greatest state and the greatest nation in the history of mankind to continue to lead the way for the light and to fight the darkness, there is no greater honor and there is no greater blessing. And there is nothing that's worth battling more for than this state and this country right now. So I thank you for your leadership. For our investors in the audience, I thank you for believing in this organization and everything it stands for. For my mom, who represents the single moms out there, who against all odds did everything in her power to make sure her 3 little girls understood that anything is possible and to never let anyone tell you that you can't achieve something, because everything in this country and with God is possible. For all of you, I thank you. For my brothers and sisters at the Texas Public Policy Foundation, it is a homecoming to see all of you who, when I stepped away and I said, y'all, I'm only going to be gone a little bit. I'm going to go to the White House for a year and then I'll be back. That was almost 10 years ago now. For those who, Greg and Clint and JB and Brian and Rob, Sarah, Annie, for all of you, Sherry, who we kind of grew up together building this organization, God bless you for continuing to carry this torch. I am now your biggest fan and your biggest cheerleader. And for all of us that understand that right now we are meeting this moment, and these decisions will be hard, but they are worthwhile, and we must continue to fight for Texas to continue to lead the way as we save America. God bless you all. Thank you so much for having me. God bless you. Thank you.